Hi everyone. As Annabelle introduced, I'm Adam. I work as the Future Foresters Officer at the Royal Forestry Society. I'll be giving a quick introduction to forestry, what it is, why it's important, but also a little bit about the careers that you can have in forestry, as well as education and training that will get you there. So building on a little bit of that video that we've just watched as well. Okay, so if I start off with highlighting what is forestry. So if I asked a lot of you sat there, what is forestry? A lot of you would probably say this. Oh, it's the cutting down of trees, isn't it? But actually, forestry is so much more. Forestry can be described as a sustainable management of woodlands for both human and environmental provisions. So a little bit about woodland in the UK. So as you can see here, we have 3.2 million hectares of woodland. Now, I wasn't entirely sure what a hectare is, but to make it a little bit simpler for me to understand, that's 4.5 million football pitches worth of woodlands. Or if you're a little bit more map-based, as you can see, approximately half of Scotland in the context of UK is woodland cover. So, woodlands are producing 11.2 million tonnes of timber, and they also are absorbing 2.3 million tonnes of CO2 each year. However, as it stands, we're importing approximately 50.2 million tonnes of carbon, of timber, sorry. Now, that's all well and good, but obviously importing timber has its issues. Importing timber from areas such as Eastern Europe can increase exposure to pests and diseases, which affect our native woodlands and productivity, but it also increases the amount of carbon used in timber production, where obviously with carbon being a major, and carbon sequestration being a major benefit of growing trees, we obviously want to avoid that as much as possible. So, what do forests provide? I bet most of you are sat at home on a wooden chair or a wooden desk with a pad of paper in front of them. That's all great. Obviously, wood goes into timber and furniture, but there's also far much more. We have all of these things. So timber is leading the way in helping fighting climate change, for absorbing carbon and storing it. It also limits the effect of floods, so reducing the amount of water that makes its way through the soils. It's also water and air purification, noise insulation, as well as providing us with oxygen, which is obviously quite important. So for all those things, I think we need to say thank you to trees, don't we? And then obviously there's many, many more. So how do we get into a career in forestry? And what careers are out there? So there's a very diverse career. So there are areas, things like forest craftsperson, which are responsible for the day-to-day management of trees. So as we mentioned, forestry is more than just cutting down trees. Forestry involves the planting, the maintenance, and yes, the eventual processing of trees. So a forest craftsperson will be on what we call the front line of forestry. So they'll be doing the everyday maintenance. They'll be using tools and equipment such as chainsaws, wood chippers, pole pruners, as well as other areas of machinery such as that. They're also conducting habitat conservation works within woodlands, as well as ensuring public access is maintained safe by maintaining footpaths, removing any troublesome trees that might have fallen down in strong winds, for example, things like that. We also have a machinery operator. As we saw in the video, there was a lot of heavy machinery used in forestry, both in the felling but also the transportation of trees once they've been felled. So large tractors are used, forwarders, as well as used in felling and transportation. A forest manager, that is a more supervisory role. So a forest manager is responsible, as the name suggests, for the daily management of areas of woodland. So they'll be developing things like management plans, which highlights what trees are being planted, when, what species as well, but also when those trees will be felled as well. And they'll conduct timber measuring, so working out what volume of timber there are in areas of woodland, and also working out the value that has on the market as well. There's also a strong element of forest mapping, so working out what trees we have where, as well as following into a plan. But there's also the more scientific approach to forestry as well. We have positions such as the tree biologist. I mentioned earlier with importing trees and timber, we have the issue of pests and diseases. So tree biologists will be working out the impact that they have, but also finding ways of limiting the impact that they have. And as I mentioned as well, with climate change, the impact that certain species of trees, different species have greater impact, have a greater tolerance to different climates. So with projected climate change, we definitely have to be thinking about the future as to what trees are going to be suitable for changing climates. There's also a forest ecologist. So as I said, forestry is more than just cutting down trees. It's also about the wise, sustainable management of woodlands as well. So a forest ecologist will be researching the relationship between species, how they interact, but also how this can influence forestry yields, but also influence the conservation of species. Something a little bit different, just to show the diversity, there's also things like forest school educators. These are becoming especially more popular recently. This basically using woodlands as a classroom, using the resources out there to help get young people out and inspire them to hopefully enjoy the woodlands. Okay. Oh, I've gone past it. Oh, rubbish. Okay, so education and training. So we have two different approaches here. Obviously, we have Scotland. We also have England and Wales. A lot of my work is based in England and Wales. So the Scottish education system was a little bit different, but I've just included some of the courses here. So education and training. So we have college courses, which I've highlighted in green. So college level courses. These vary. So these will give you a mixture of both theoretical and practical learning. Obviously, you'll be learning modules such as tree biology, tree health, so pests and diseases, how to identify them, but also how to act on those. You'll be conducting practical skills such as felling, woodland maintenance, as well as learning a little bit about management plans. Management plans are definitely built on more a degree level or a higher level course. There's also university courses, as I mentioned. Here you'll be learning, setting you up to a position that is more akin to a woodland manager, so a more supervisory position. Here you'll be learning more, as I said, about management plans using GIS, so Geographical Informational Systems and Services, to create maps of woodlands, working out what trees we have where, if there's prevalence of pests and diseases along those lines, but also more of the business side of forestry as well. So working out, as I mentioned before, what volumes and what value that equates to in woodlands, but also organising sales and things like that. Another approach as well is obviously the apprenticeship approach, which is quite common in the rural sector. An apprenticeship provides on-the-job learning, earning a salary whilst also developing your skills, your practical skills. I've highlighted some Scottish hires as well as A-level subjects that might be useful for a career in forestry, things like geography, biology, chemistry and maths, as well as business studies. I think one of the main considerations employers look for in the forestry sector is, are you willing to learn? It's not necessarily about what you know already, it's about how you'll go forwards and you'll learn that. So an eagerness to learn is definitely important. So obviously these are just a little introduction to the courses, but there's obviously the resources, Land for Scotland for courses in Scotland, and for England and Wales we also have a website called careerinforestry.org.uk that I've highlighted at the bottom of the screen just down there. So other than an education in forestry to increase your knowledge, what other soft skills are important? Firstly, I think probably most important, you need to be happy working outdoors in all weathers. That's obviously the cold, wet winters, but also the heat of summer. Forestry, of course, is based outdoors. So that resilience to get out of the bed in the morning in the pouring rain definitely is important. You have to be committed. You have to have an appreciation for nature and the environment, and obviously, especially trees. Some tree identification skills is definitely important, because not all trees are, or not all forests are plantation woodlands with single species. There's quite often a diversity. So being able to pick which species are going to have the most value in a market is important, as well as being able to identify pests and diseases that affect certain species. You need to be responsible. Obviously, forestry, as I mentioned, is using equipment such as chainsaws for felling trees, but also big machinery. So being able to be responsible and aware of your environment and being safer, not only being aware of the safety of not only yourself, but also your team around you. And I think something else that's really important is being able to see the bigger picture. Obviously, trees don't grow overnight. It is a long-term project. So your work you do one day, you probably shouldn't be expected to see the immediate impact, but it's definitely investment for the future. So having that future sight is definitely important. So a career in forestry is also really diverse. So as we saw in the video at the start, you're working, because your opportunities across the UK, working in woodlands such as plantations of Sitka spruce in North Scotland, all the way through to mixed deciduous woodlands in the south of England. It really is diverse. So your learning really doesn't stop all the way through your career. So as I mentioned, you'll also need practical qualifications, and that also comes with practical experience. It's okay having studied a course at college, but employers are really going to be keen on seeing what you're able to do as well, knowing that forestry is the right career, because as I said, forestry definitely can be challenging, but if you can get some experience and maybe even some qualifications behind you, things such as your chainsaw license, brush cutter license are definitely helpful. Obviously, some college courses can provide these as part of your course, but it also helps if you can possibly support yourself through some of these as well. These make you a far more attractive employee, but also for the right employee, employers are also willing to provide this as well. So mentioning on employers, so the main employers across the UK are what's automatically are Forestry England, Natural Resources Wales, Forest Commission Scotland. We also have private estates as well that have their own forestry departments, which is the traditional sense of forestry, but also you have organisations such as the National Trust, local wildlife trusts, local councils, but also community woodlands as well. Obviously, in the current climate, there's a big influence on preventing climate change, and a lot of communities, a lot of charities are getting involved with tree planting and urban greening as well. So that highlights education and training. So I'd also like to talk a little bit about technology in forestry. So as we saw in the video at the start of this session, technology is changing. It's more than just a older man in a check shirt with an axe in a woodland now. Forestry is becoming a lot more technologically advanced. So I've got two photos here. On the left, you can see what is a little bit more of an old style tractor being used as a forwarder there with its trailer, moving timber out of a freshly felled area of woodland. It's moved on a lot more to the photo on the right, which is a new John Deere 1910G forwarder. So these are used for transporting wood out of a felled site. As you can see, technology is becoming a lot bigger, but they're also becoming a lot more based around computers as well. A lot of tractors now are, and forwarders and fellers are satellite guided. They also have mapping technology built inside them, and there's a big influence in the sector on getting younger people who have the ability to not only drive these, but also operate the computer and computer-aided machinery, and also program machinery as well. So on the next slide, we also have drones as well. So a drone, to me, it springs to mind. You see a lot on Instagram, Facebook at the moment, taking some really cool photos, but drones in forestry are used for so much more than that. Here we can see some examples of the use of LiDAR, which is similar to radar, used to map areas of woodland. Now, as I said, it takes more than photos, so new technology in drones can identify tree heights, as you can see in the bottom left, with the brighter orange being taller trees, all the way down to the blue being obviously lower levels. They also work out planting density, but they can also be used to track the spread of pests and diseases as well, which is obviously key.